Have you ever wondered why so many people seem just fine in their late 70s and then quietly vanish before 82? No, it's not always cancer, it's not a heart attack, it's not even slipping in the shower during a daring attempt to clean your toes. What takes them is quieter than that, slower, more polite. It's called fading. Most people don't die, they dim. One day you stop laughing from the gut, then you stop being touched, then you stop being curious, and slowly the soul packs its bags while the body keeps shuffling around Walgreens. I've worked with enough seniors to tell you it's not disease that kills first, it's disconnection from your body, from sensation, from the parts of you that still remember what aliveness feels like. And what's wild is no one talks about this. Not your doctor, not your pastor, not your kids, God forbid. But today, we're going to, because if you want to live past 82, not just survive, but actually be here, you have to reclaim something. Most people gave up quietly, somewhere between their last grandkid's graduation and their second knee replacement. Spoiler alert, it's not broccoli. Part 1, nobody's touched you in years. That's the problem. Let's drop the niceties for a moment. When was the last time someone touched you? Not with a stethoscope, not to check your blood pressure, not to pat your shoulder like you're some fragile museum exhibit, but with real human presence. I asked this once to a 79-year-old man in a quiet assisted living home. He paused, looked at his hands, and said, "Maybe 2008. Then he laughed and added, "But my dog died in 2009, so I might be wrong." That right there, that's how people begin to vanish. We think death is a moment. It's not. It's a process. And for far too many seniors, it begins when the skin goes untouched, when warmth is replaced by Velcro. Shoes and hugs are traded in for hand sanitizer. This is what I call touch starvation, a quiet epidemic. Not dramatic like cancer, not noble like heart disease, just a slow fade into invisibility. From a psychological lens, it's devastating. From a Buddhist one, it's tragic. Because in the Dharma, there's a word for the sense contact that makes us feel alive, Vedana, the felt experience, pleasure, discomfort, heat movement. It's the body's way of reminding the mind, hey, I'm still here. But when you go untouched for long enough, even by yourself, your body forgets you exist. It goes into hibernation, circulation slows, hormones retreat. Neural pathways go dim like a house with no guests and one flickering hallway light. And then comes the emotional part, numbness, not pain, not sorrow, just polite beige-colored nothingness. The tragedy. Most people never even notice. They're too busy being dignified to realize they're slowly disappearing. So no, the danger after 60 isn't just osteoporosis or cholesterol. It's disembodiment. It's the long, slow divorce from your own skin. You want to live past 82. Touch something. And if nobody else will guess what, you're still here. You've got hands, and we're just getting started. Part 2, masturbation over medication, the unspoken prescription. Let's get this out of the way before your inner church lady starts coughing politely. Yes, we're going there, because if you're over 60 and you've been skipping the solo symphony out of guilt shame or just plain forgetfulness, I'm here to tell you gently but directly, you're not just neglecting pleasure, you're skipping medicine. You see, society taught us that touching yourself was for teenage boys with bad judgment and empty houses. But neuroscience and your own nervous system say otherwise. Every time you stimulate yourself, your brain lights up like a Christmas tree, your heart pumps like it's found a reason to bother, and your endocrine system goes, "Oh, we're still doing this. Fantastic." We're talking dopamine, oxytocin, endorphins, nature's original anti-anxiety cocktail, and you don't even need a prescription. Just a quiet room and enough courage to stop apologizing for still being alive. And let's add a Buddhist twist here. Pleasure isn't the problem, clinging is. There's a big difference between chasing sensation like a dog after a car and consciously inviting your body to feel joy. One is addiction, the other is reverence. I've met 85-year-olds who believed masturbation was selfish. Meanwhile, they were on 6 medications for stress, depression, and insomnia. You want to fix that trifecta. Touch yourself. Mindfully. Call it a spiritual massage. Call it neurochemical yoga. Call it Tuesday. Because here's the truth. Your body doesn't care what century you were raised in. It just wants to stay alive. And one of the best ways to do that, pleasure, not performative, not pornographic, just honest, present, human touch. Even if it's just 5 fingers and a memory of how to feel. And if your first reaction is, that's inappropriate, ask yourself what's more inappropriate. Pleasure or quietly dying before anyone notices. Part 3, your brain's favorite drug, is you. Let's do a little experiment. Close your eyes. Imagine you're 22 again. Someone whispers in your ear. Goosebumps rise on your arm. Your stomach flips for no good reason. You smile and feel alive. Now fast forward to last Tuesday. You sat in the recliner for 4 hours, wondering if that sound in your knee meant anything. Your pulse barely broke a sweat, and your brain, that thing was running on decaf. This, my friend, is not just aging, it's a neurological drought. Here's what the science says. The act of physical pleasure, especially self-stimulation, activates more areas of the brain than doing your taxes, watching cable news, or even having a good cry. We're talking the prefrontal cortex, thinking, amygdala, emotion, cerebellum movement, and even the reward centers that light up when you eat cake or remember a great vacation. And unlike prescription drugs, this treatment doesn't list anal leakage as a side effect. Now let's get Buddhist about it. In mindfulness practice, there's something called kayanupassana, the contemplation of the body. Not as a sack of aging meat, but as a temple of awareness. Every sensation is a doorway. Every breath, every tingle, every twitch. Buddha's bell ringing softly from inside your skin. You see, touching yourself isn't juvenile, it's medicine for the moment. But most people over 60 have been told their bodies are broken, expired, or no longer appropriate. And so the very thing that could reawaken their brain becomes a forbidden ritual. They forget to remember. You want neuroplasticity, want memory movement, and a brain that doesn't feel like a soft-boiled egg. Give it stimulation. Give it delight. Give it 5 minutes of honest-to-God presence. Your brain doesn't need a crossword puzzle. It needs you. Part 4. You didn't just get old. You inherited generational shame. Let's set the record straight. You didn't just forget how to touch yourself. You were trained not to. Trained by your parents, your teachers, your preachers, your priests. Raised in a time when the worst sin wasn't murder. It was needing something human and tender. Pleasure that was for whores and hippies. Desire that was for men on business trips and teenagers going to hell. Your body, that was a utility. A shovel, a tool, not a temple. So it's no wonder that now, after decades of being useful, appropriate, respectable, you look down at your hands and think, what now? Here's what. Now we acknowledge the inheritance, because what you're carrying isn't just age. It's the shame of generations. You were taught to be a good person by denying yourself, especially when it came to the body. And Buddhism calls this a wrong view, miccha-ditthi, when the mind mistakes repression for virtue. You don't get points for pretending you don't have a body, you just get disconnected. And here's the cruel twist. Even after your kids move out, your spouse passes on, and nobody's looking, the rules still live inside your bones. That little voice still whispers, don't touch that, even though that is you. I once sat with an 82-year-old man who told me I haven't felt love since my wife died in '99. I thought maybe that part of me was buried with her. I said it wasn't buried, it's just waiting for your permission. So here it is, permission granted. Not to misbehave, but to remember. To remember that your skin isn't a relic, it's a river. And it didn't dry up, it was dammed by the ghosts of voices you trusted. It's time to let the water move again. Part 5. Retirement. Isn't a vacation, it's witness protection for the soul. 300 words, we like to romanticize retirement. Time to relax, they say. No more alarm clocks, no more bosses, no more stress. But what they don't tell you is that for many people, retirement is less like a reward and more like witness protection for the soul. You vanish from your name tag, your inbox, your purpose. You used to be someone, now you're that guy who used to be someone. I once met a retired nurse named Dolores at a community center in Oregon. She had spent 40 years helping others on her feet in trauma rooms, holding people's hands as they took their final breaths. After retirement, she moved to a condo with a view. You know what she told me? Sometimes I go days without speaking out loud. I miss being needed more than I miss being busy. That's the danger we don't talk about. Elderly psychology calls it role loss, the sudden removal of identity anchors that gave you relevance. Without something to do, many seniors unconsciously start believing they have nothing left to be. And the Buddhist perspective, when the ego loses form, job title, schedule, usefulness, it suffers. But the deeper problem is moha delusion, the belief that you're only real when you're producing. But here's the catch. You're still here, still breathing, still wrapped in this sacred, aging, magnificent body. The solution isn't another cruise or jigsaw puzzle. It's to start feeling again, to light the fire, not of busyness, but of presence. Dolores, by the way, started volunteering at a wildlife rehab center, not because she needed structure, but because she missed touching life. Holding a baby owl did more for her blood pressure than all her medications combined. So if you're retired and feeling like a background character in your own story, this isn't the end. It's the first scene in the part of your life where you start mattering to yourself again. Part 6, your longevity, is hiding under a layer of dust and shame. 350 words. Let me tell you the ugliest truth about aging. It's not the gray hair, not the knee that sounds like popcorn when you stand, not even the random chin hairs that show up like uninvited party guests. It's the shame. Not the loud kind no one's publicly flogging themselves after 70. No, I'm talking about the soft, silent shame, the kind that accumulates in corners, that coats the mirror, that whispers things like, "You're too old for that. You should be grateful, not needy. You don't need pleasure anymore. You need fiber." Shame like that is like dust. It settles when you stop moving, and before long it covers everything. I once sat with a widower named Frank, 76, ex-firefighter, twice a grandfather. He confessed to me, eyes down, that he hadn't felt desire in years, not because it was gone, but because he thought he wasn't allowed to want anymore. I didn't want to be one of those old men. He said, creepy desperate, I figured, better to shut it all off. This is what elderly psychology calls emotional self-censorship, where we quietly retire not just from work, but from wanting. But in Buddhist practice, there's a beautiful reversal. You don't free yourself by cutting off desire. You free yourself by seeing it clearly, by greeting it with compassion, not judgment. Desire isn't your enemy. It's your aliveness, knocking on the door. Frank started small, breathwork, gentle, stretching, even bought massage oil just to see what it felt like. Within weeks, he told me, I don't feel young, but I feel here, and I haven't felt here in a long time. Here's the truth. Your vitality didn't disappear. It just got buried under a belief that said you had to stop living loudly after a certain age. Brush off the dust. Wipe the mirror. You're still in there, and you've got time to feel it. So here we are, friend. You've made it through 6 uncomfortable, slightly inappropriate, spiritually rebellious chapters about your body, your shame, your spark, and the wild idea that you might still be deliciously, gloriously alive, not just surviving. Sensing Buddhism teaches us to sit with impermanence, to watch the leaves fall without clinging. But it also teaches us this: while you're here, really here, you don't have to fold yourself into a corner like a polite napkin at someone else's table. You can be messy, curious, hungry. You can laugh from your belly and cry into your toast. You can touch yourself without apologizing to ghosts. Because aging is not the rehearsal for death, it's the final act. The moment the soul gets loud, the skin gets honest, and the old stories can finally burn off like fog in sunlight. So no, don't leave quietly. Don't let them cremate you before you've stopped glowing. Leave fingerprints. Leave laughter. Leave behind a body that was felt all the way through. And when it's your time, and it will be, may you go not as someone who faded, But as someone who lived so fully, the universe had to ask you twice to leave. You're not done yet. Now go touch something, especially you.